Om Jnanatimrandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shri Shri Radha Gopinath Bhagwan ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani ki Jai. Shri Shri Gauranitai ki Jai. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Sri Chaitanya Caritamrta ki Jai. Samaveda Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai. Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari. Hare Krishna. Just a couple of quick announcements before we read the concluding verses of the Madhya Lila. On 18th of March, we are going to celebrate Gaura Purnima, the divine appearance day of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The information about the festival you can see in our website, newsletter, WhatsApp group, Facebook page, everywhere. I want to take this opportunity to thank all the devotees who have sponsored different items to help us organize this festival. There are still some items left. If any of you like to take part in it, you can visit this site. I think the link is iskon.com.au/donate. So if you go there, you can make the donation. So thank you very much for your kind consideration. We are in the final verses of the last chapter of Madhya Lila. Maybe we'll be able to finish today, otherwise we'll finish tomorrow. So we were discussing about how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, after having preached Krishna consciousness to everyone in Varanasi, especially the Mayavadi sannyasis, he then heads back to Puri along with his personal servant Balabhadra Bhattacharya. If you see in some artwork when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu makes all the animals and beasts dance, you would see one personality hiding behind the tree. With a little fear, he would still be observing. In CC, I've seen there is a beautiful artwork. I don't know if this artwork has it. That's Balabhadra Bhattacharya. So that is his servant, traveling servant. So he heads back to Puri. We will see that today. And then before going to Puri, he asks Sanatana Goswami to go to Vrindavan, meet Rupa Goswami, who is his younger brother, and then carry out the instructions which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given him, which is to excavate the places, establish places of worship, write books glorifying about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, as well as to write a detailed Vaishnava etiquette manual with which anyone who wants to follow Vaishnava lifestyle, they would have all the information. And you can see how Sanatana Goswami meticulously carried out each one of those instructions. And then Sanatana Goswami, with a heavy heart, he heads towards Vrindavan. And then he misses Rupa Goswami, because Rupa Goswami goes by the banks of Ganges to Varanasi, whereas Sanatana Goswami, he takes the highway route. So they miss, their paths don't cross. So by the time Sanatana Goswami comes to Vrindavan, Rupa Goswami, along with their younger brother Vallabha, he had already reached Varanasi. So there, Rupa Goswami meets with the associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So that's what we are going to read. And after meeting with them, Rupa Goswami then goes to Bengal, knowing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had already gone back to Puri. So then Rupa Goswami goes and meets Chaitanya Mahaprabhu one more time, second meeting. And then he would go to Vrindavan. Sanatana Goswami again would go to Puri, meet Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that we'll see in Antya Lila, and then he'll go back again. So this is the concluding section of Madhya Lila. What we have been doing, I think this is 85th, 86th class. That's how long it actually took for us to just get acquainted. We are not going through so much detail. I was making a note of different topics which I thought we can revisit later as a separate seminar topic. So far I have gathered close to 33 topics just for Madhya Lila alone. Adi Lila has more. And Antya Lila, obviously. we'll see. So there is so much here. All we are doing now is to just get acquainted, because we get to hear Bhagavad Gita very often. We know some verses. We get to hear Bhagavatam every day, Nityam Bhagavata Sevya, but Caitanya Charitamrta we don't get to hear. So I thought, okay, first parts, we just go through it, get ourselves familiarized, at least get acquainted with the different personalities' names a little bit. Then we can come back and we can discuss each one of those instructions, conversations, pastimes in much more detail. So that's the plan. So we are in Sri Caitanya Charitamrta, Madhya Lila chapter 25, text 216. Sanatana Goswami remained in Vrindavana, and Rupa Goswami and Anupama was also called as Vallabha. Anupama is father of Jiva Goswami. So there are 3 Goswamis in one family. 2 brothers and their nephew. Text 217, Madhya Lila chapter 25. When Rupa Goswami arrived at Varanasi, he met the Maharashtrian Brahmana, Chandrasekhara and Tapan Mishra. While Rupa Goswami was staying at Varanasi, he resided at the house of Chandrasekhara and took prasadam at the house of Tapan Mishra. In this way, he heard of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's instructions to Sanatana Goswami in Varanasi. As we were discussing, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructs Sanatana Goswami, it's not only Sanatana Goswami who was hearing, he was the primary audience. But there were other devotees also who were hearing that instructions. As much as when Shukadeva Goswami spoke Srimad Bhagavatam, even though his primary audience is Parikshit Maharaj, but there were thousands of other sages also who were present, including Vyasadeva, Narada Muni, so many other personalities. They were also present there. So here also, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave those instructions to Sanatana Goswami, there were other personalities who heard, which are Maharashtrian Brahmana, Tapan Mishra, Chandrasekhara, and they were repeating the instructions to Srila Rupa Goswami. While staying at Varanasi, Rupa Goswami heard of all Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's activities. When he heard of his deliverance of Mayavadi sannyasis, he became very happy. When Rupa Goswami saw that all the people of Varanasi respected Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he became very happy. He even heard stories from the general populace. After staying in Varanasi for about 10 days, Rupa Goswami returned to Bengal. In this way, I have described the activities of Rupa and Sanatana. So says Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. As Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was returning to Jagannath Puri, he passed through the solitary forest and he received great pleasure in doing so. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu happily returned to Jagannath Puri in the company of his servant Balabhadra Bhattacharya. As previously, the Lord performed many pleasing pastimes with the forest animals. So same Jarikanta forest he goes through the same forest again. And he performed many pleasing pastimes. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu arrived at a place known as Ataranala near Jagannath Puri, he sent Balabhadra Bhattacharya to call for his devotees. Hearing news of the Lord's arrival from Balabhadra Bhattacharya, hordes of devotees became so happy that they seemed to be getting their lives back. It was as though their consciousness had returned to their bodies. Their senses also became agitated. Being overwhelmed with great pleasure, all the devotees hastily went to see the Lord. They met him on the banks of the celebrated lake called Narendra Sarovara. When Paramananda Puri and Brahmananda Bharati met Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Lord offered them his respectful obeisances due to their being god brothers of his spiritual master. They both then embraced Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in love and affection. So you will see, be it when Purna Purushottam Bhagavan, Krishna comes, or be it when the same Supreme Lord comes as Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they follow the social etiquette very strictly to the dot. When Krishna would meet the Pandavas, he would touch the feet of Yudhishthir and Bhima. He would embrace Arjuna. Nakul and Sahadev would come and touch Krishna's lotus feet. So Krishna was strictly following that because Yudhishthir Maharaj and Bhima are senior to Krishna. Arjuna is his contemporary, his friend. So he embraces. So to seniors he touches their feet, and to Arjuna, with Arjuna he embraces, and Nakul and Shakadev being younger to Krishna, they would come and touch his feet. So same way here also we see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he is offering respectful obeisances to Paramananda Puri and Brahmananda Bharati. They both are god brothers of his spiritual master, which means his spiritual master's name is Ishwara Puri. Ishwara Puri's spiritual master is Madhavendra Puri. Madhavendra Puri had a lot of disciples. Advaita Acharya also is his disciple. Ishwara Puri is also a disciple, and so are Paramananda Puri and Brahmananda Bharati. So in the absence of our spiritual master, we should give same respect to the god brothers and god sisters of our spiritual master. That's the etiquette. So here we see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is following that. However, Paramananda Puri and Brahmananda Bharati, knowing very well who Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is, they are reciprocating. They both then embraced Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in love and affection. Devotees like Swarup Damodara, Gadadhar Pandit, Jagadananda, Kashishwara, Govinda, Vakreshwara all came to meet the Lord. Swarup Damodar, if you remember, that is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's personal secretary, Lalita Saki in Vrajalila. Gadadhar Pandit, we know Srimati Radharani. Jagadananda, again Srimati Radharani. Kashishwara. Kashishwara is another god brother of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and so is Govinda. But they both come to assist Chaitanya Mahaprabhu upon the instructions of their spiritual master Ishwara Puri. Ishwara Puri, before he disappears, he actually instructs two of his dear disciples to go and serve Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, telling them who Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is. So when they come first, approaching Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with this instruction of their spiritual master, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu declines taking their service because they're all his own god brothers. So citing etiquette, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says no. But at that time, we'll see Sarubham Bhattacharya steps in and he says, yes, social etiquette is one, but here instruction of Guru has to be followed no matter what. So between the two, instruction of Guru takes higher priority. So you should take service. Then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, whatever you all say. So then Govinda becomes his personal servant, and Kashishwara would actually assist Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was very well built and he would control the crowd whenever Chaitanya Mahaprabhu goes to Puri temple or anywhere else. Each one of them you see. And Govinda, Vakreshwar Pandit. Vakreshwar Pandit is known for his dancing. He would dance non-stop, 28 hours, 31 hours, 25 hours, non-stop. So Vakreshwar Pandit is known for his dancing. Simply, anybody, when they look at Vakreshwar Prabhu dancing for Harinam, they would get love of Godhead. Their heart will just melt, seeing his love. So that's Vakreshwar Pandit. Kashi Mishra, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's home, Gambhira, that is Kashi Mishra's residence actually. Pradyumna Mishra, Damodar Pandit. Actually, there are a lot of personalities. I'll go through quickly. We'll touch on each one of them again when we start Antya-lila. Kashi Mishra, Pradyumna Mishra, Damodar Pandit, Haridas Thakur and Shankara Pandit also came there to meet the Lord. All the other devotees also came and fell down at the Lord's lotus feet. In return, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced them all with great ecstatic love. Thus, they all merged in the ocean of transcendental bliss. Then the Lord and all his devotees proceeded toward the temple of Jagannatha to see the deity. As soon as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw Lord Jagannatha in the temple, he was immediately overwhelmed with love and affection. He chanted and danced with his devotees for a long time. The priests immediately brought them flower garlands and prasadam. The temple's watchman, who was named Tulasi, also came and offered his obeisances to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In some instances, you will see Tulasi carrying Mahaprasad. Always he will carry Mahaprasad for the devotees. Here also, he is doing. When the news spread that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had arrived at Jagannath Puri, devotees like Sarubham Bhattacharya, Ramananda Roy and Vaninath Roy all came to meet him. The Lord and all his devotees then went to the residence of Kashi Mishra. Sarubham Bhattacharya and Pandita Goswami also invited the Lord to dine at their homes. Pandita Goswami or Pandita Goswami is Gadadhar Pandit. Accepting their invitation, the Lord asked them to bring all the prasadam there so that he could eat it with his devotees. Upon receiving Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's order, Sarubham Bhattacharya and Pandita Goswami brought sufficient prasadam from the temple of Jagannath. The Lord then dined with everyone at his own place. Thus I have described how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu returned to Jagannath Puri from Vrindavana. In terms of deity worship, here It's actually mentioned how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu immediately went and took darshan of Lord Jagannath. If you read this famous verse of Prahlad Maharaj, when Hiranyakashipu asks him, initially he asks him, so my dear little child, what did you learn? Then Prahlad Maharaj preaches Krishna consciousness to him. So then Hiranyakashipu thinks somebody has misled his little innocent child. So he calls his spiritual, his teachers actually, Shanda and Amarka. Shanda and Amarka, they both are the sons of Shukracharya, who is like the Kulaguru of the demons. So Shukracharya's sons, they both come, and then Hiranyakashipu tells them, please teach him properly, teach him about political science, how to deal with politics. So then they try to teach him. Prahlad Maharaj tells them, look, politics means then I have to see somebody as my friend, somebody as my enemy. There should not be any duality. And then he starts to preach Krishna consciousness to them. And then they say, shh, keep quiet. Then finally, after training, Prahlad Maharaj, at least they thought they have trained him, successfully brainwashed him. They bring Prahlad Maharaj back to Hiranyakashipu. Again, Hiranyakashipu picks him up, puts him on his lap, 5-year-old little boy. And he asks him, so, my dear child, please tell me the best of what you have heard. Then he starts, Matirna Krishna Paratasvatova, Mito Vipatyata Graha Paratanam, Adanta Kopir, Vishatam Tamishram, Puna Puna Charvita Charvananam. He starts to preach. And then Hiranyakashipu gets confused. And then again he looks at him. Then he starts Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Pada Sevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmani Vedanam. He lists the 9 different processes. Now, reason why I am saying this is, if you go to the purports of this particular verse, this is perhaps the longest purport Prabhupada has written in Bhagavatam and CC. When you look at it, it goes like 9-10 pages. However, if you read that one carefully, you will see the subtle nuances of each and every process of bhakti. You take this as an exercise. Okay, go and find out the verse. Shravanam Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Pada Sevanam, Archanam Vandanam, Dasyam Sakyam, Atmani Vedanam. Go to that verse, read the purport. It's a long purport. I give you the warning beforehand. Don't lose hope. You read. You'll be surprised with the amount of detail Prabhupada actually puts in Navida Bhakti. Usually when we think Navida Bhakti, we think there are 9 different anga or limbs of devotional service. If you read the purpose carefully, if you give a casual read, you will miss the detail. So take your time and read slowly. Gather as much patience, focus as you can. Prabhupada there he says, unless someone masters Shravanam, they cannot do Kirtanam. Unless somebody masters Shravanam and Kirtanam, they cannot do Smaranam. Which means Navida Bhakti goes on a cumulative fashion. If we, sometimes you will come across, somebody concocting their own process, saying, I just want to think about the Lord. Prabhupada there he says, thinking is possible only if the first 2 steps are done. Same way, only if the first 3 steps are done, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, then only you can do Pada Sevanam. Okay, then after mastering 4 only you can go to the 5th one. Now Pada Sevanam, if you think about it, who is the example for Pada Sevanam? Anyone remembers? Who massages the Supreme Lord's lotus feet? Who? Massaging lotus feet. Lakshmi ji. Okay, have you seen, like in some movies also you might have seen, I always say that, you see the door opens inside, the ocean of milk, Vishnu will be lying, Lakshmi ji will be massaging. And we think, massaging lotus feet, there's only one Supreme Lord, that service is taken already. I have thought that like that. But then why is it given as one of the 9 processes of devotional service? Of course, when you go for seva, pujaris, they get the opportunity to do. But then it looks like very limited, correct? Looks like, even on one hand we say, to perform bhakti, there is no qualification needed. But then looks like you have to get second initiated to do, certain anga of bhakti. Prabhupada there he says, Pada Sevanam means meditating on the lotus feet of the Lord. That's why I said, if you do a casual read, you will miss all the detail. Read it very, very slowly, underline it, take notes. If you do that, you will surprise yourself with the amount of detail and you will realize how wrongly we have been understanding Krishna consciousness for a long time. Pada Sevanam, worshipping Tulsi Maharani comes under Pada Sevanam. Where is the connection? Tulsi Maharani is worshipped by being offered to the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. So it comes under Pada Sevanam. It's called Tadiya Upasanam. Anything that is connected. Aradhanam Sarvesham Vishnu Aradhanam Param. Tasmat Parataram Devi Tadiyanam. Tadiya means anything in connection to the Supreme Lord. Worship of Vaishnavas comes under Pada Sevanam. Sometimes you may think, where is this? Vaishnava Seva is not in any of the 9 different processes of bhakti, correct? Shravanam, no. Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Pada Sevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivadanam. Everything is in connection to Krishna only. But worshipping, serving devotees come under Pada Sevanam. Worshipping Mother Ganga comes under Pada Sevanam. Mother Ganga, she emanates from the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. Worshipping Mother Yamuna, Pada Sevanam. So you read that purport, you will find so much clarity in what we are actually doing as a process. Because many times if we do things mechanically, we say Vaishnava Seva. Why Vaishnava Seva? This is a direct anga of bhakti. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Pada Sevanam. 4th anga of bhakti. Pada Sevanam, yes, literally also it means, of course, Lakshmiji. She is the topmost servant of the Supreme Lord. So she is massaging Krishna's lotus feet. But Prabhupada says, one who cannot directly go and offer service to the Supreme Lord, they can use, because to come to Pada Sevanam, they have to first master Smaranam. So in order to, if somebody is not able to directly offer that service, because they have already mastered Smaranam, they can meditate on the Supreme Lord also, lotus feet. That is also Pada Sevanam. Okay, and then Prabhupada there he quotes about Manasa Seva, because meditation is not easy. Chanting itself is hard. Controlling gross sense itself is hard. Forget about subtle sense. It's impossible. But if we control the gross sense, controlling subtle sense becomes easy later. Especially the tongue. It's given in Shastras. Okay, so Shravanam, we have to first start with hearing, then we have to do Kirtan. Only if we do these two properly, sometimes have you got this experience? We feel very elated when we are in the temple chanting. But as soon as even if we leave the temple room or go home, just to step out, we feel down. And here, you feel very ecstatic. You go to the restaurant, you close your eyes, you will see Gopinath. Go to the car park, okay, it will be blurry. By the time you leave the temple room, temple premises, you close your eyes, you will only get sleep. You cannot bring Krishna. Reason why we are not able to meditate is because our Shravanam and Kirtanam is weak. You read the purport, you will see Prabhupada giving beautiful instructions about how this process of Krishna consciousness works. So it's not just each one of them, they are independent process. Yes and no. Yes, but if you want to proceed on the advanced limbs of bhakti, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam, each one of those stages, it is possible only if you go for the first one, second one, third one, then fourth one. Without doing the first 3, you can't do 4. Without doing the first 4, you can't do the 5th one. Prabhupada writes like that. And Prabhupada gives example of remembrance. He gives an example of this Brahmana from Brahma Vaivarta Purana. There was one Brahmana who once hears from Shastra that he is a very pious Brahmana but very impoverished Brahmana. So he hears from Shastra that if you are not able to do seva to Krishna directly, you can do the same seva by meditation also, Manasa Seva. Then he says, all right, no cost, I am impoverished anyway. So he would close his eyes and in meditation, he would sit and offer everything, all the service to Krishna. He would sit there, he would dress the Supreme Lord, he would bathe the Supreme Lord. Bathing also, he would use all golden vessels. What's the problem? It's just meditation only, right? There's no limit to that. So he would use all of that and he would do. So one day he cooks sweet rice and then before offering to the Supreme Lord, he wanted to understand whether the sweet rice is actually, if it is too hot. to be offered to the Supreme Lord. He wanted to test it. So he touches it. As soon as he touches, in reality also, his finger gets burned. Even though mentally only he is touching. And then Vishnu, the Puranic story, pastime actually goes, Vishnu, as soon as he sees that, he smiles. And then Lakshmi ji, as she is massaging Vishnu's lotus feet, she asks the reason. Then Vishnu says, let's first bring the Brahmana, then I'll tell you. Then he brings the Brahmana. And then he tells Mother Lakshmi ji about his devotion. Then Lakshmi ji also blesses him. Now the point we have to understand here is, we think everything is just random. It's not random. You see this Brahmana, he is impoverished, but what is his desire? His desire is to serve the Supreme Lord. How often? All the time. If you have a strong desire to serve the Lord all the time, there is one type of mukti that will award you that facility. It's called samipya. Samipya means to share the same residence as the Lord. I was telling to the temple devotees, we have all attained samipya mukti. Whoever comes to the temple, we have all attained samipya mukti. Whoever resides in the neighborhood, whoever visits the temple, samipya, to be in proximity of the Lord. Sarupya, Salokya, Samipya, Sarishti. Sarupya means the form of the Lord would be the same. If you read Caritamrta, there is a pastime of one friend of Krishna, Gopakumar. He goes to different realms of the spiritual world. So where he goes to Vaikuntha, all he knows is he knows Krishna. That's all he knows. He doesn't know Vishnu, he doesn't know others. So he goes there, he doesn't know in the sense, he doesn't have a personal connection. His relationship with Krishna is, he is a friend of Krishna. That's all he knows. In fact, when Krishna was actually taking part in the wrestling match with Kamsa, Mushtik Chanura, he would come across in Krishna book, 10th canto. At that time, some of the Gopa friends also came there, and they were also sitting in the arena. And they were clapping hands, whistling, telling Krishna, hey, you imagine, they are just like village boys. They have got one of their mates going there and doing something big. So they clap and they are trying to encourage Krishna that way. This is the rasa of Gopakumar. All he knows is, Krishna is my friend, I play games with him. That's all he knows. So then he arrives on the doorstep of Vaikuntha. There he looks there and he sees Jai Vijay. First he looks Jai and he sees 400 form. Immediately he pays obeisances. Oh Supreme Lord Vishnu, please bless me. Then they laugh and they tell him, hey, we are not Vishnu, get up. We look like him, but we are not Vishnu, come. But the distinguishing feature of Vishnu, even though others also look like Vishnu, is there is a tuft of hair on Vishnu's chest. It's called Srivatsa. Have you come across this term? Srivatsa. Srivatsa is the name of the hair, golden, silvery hair on the chest of Supreme Lord. So everyone looks the same, but only one personality will have the special hair on the chest. So with that, we would recognize this is the Supreme Lord. So then they take him there. So this is called Sarupya. Salokya is to live in the same loka, world. Samipya means one who is always in the close proximity. Because this Brahmana desired to be with the Supreme Lord all the time and to offer service, he says, all right, come. And he gives him. Brahmana doesn't need to ask. If you have a question about what is our Swarupa, we were discussing last week. We don't need to bother. Krishna knows. I'll give you another example. If you read 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, there Krishna, he says, when Arjuna asks, my Lord, what will happen to a yogi who tried very hard during his life or her life, but just at the end of his or her life, they didn't attain perfection. At least if they had enjoyed materially, we can at least say, at least they attained material enjoyment. You see the logical question? Go for Arjuna. At least they could have enjoyed materially. That also they gave up. Gave up for what? Spiritual perfection. In, of course, Ashtanga Yoga. But then here also they didn't attain anything. Wouldn't their situation be like that of a riven cloud? Prabhupada gives example in one lecture. Just like the cloud, actually he writes in the purport itself in Bhagavad Gita. Sometimes have you seen, there will be a big blob of cloud one place and a little chunk will come out and you will see another big chunk right next. Have you watched? Have you guessed at the stars? Otherwise you have wasted your child life. Come on. I had so much time. You look there, suddenly, you think, that cloud looks like Hanumanji. You think, have you got that experience? You'll see shapes, try to see. That looks like a big polar bear, and then suddenly the polar bear also will change shape. That looks like amoeba, no shape, So, one small thing gets separated from there, wanting to join. And when the small guy tries to join, the big guy will keep moving. Have you seen it? And then it will get lost. Wind will blow it away. Gone. Arjuna uses this as an analogy. Wouldn't the destiny of such a yogi be like that of that riven cloud? Either it should stay with this cloud, which is material enjoyment, or it gave this up to go to spiritual perfection. They are also gone. In between, what it happened? It got blown away. Tamal Krishna Maharaj asks this question to Prabhupada when Tamal Krishna Maharaj meets Prabhupada for second time. And I still have, if you read Tamal Krishna Maharaj's autobiography, it's called Servant of the Servant, a beautiful book, you can read. I always say, that's the book I have read the most. I have kept count of it, something like 150, 160 times now. I think I gifted you that book. Time to open it. So, Tamal Krishna Maharaj asks the same question to Prabhupada, because Tamal Krishna Maharaj was also, he hasn't, I think it was Thomas, he hasn't actually started practicing Krishna consciousness yet. He's just meeting Prabhupada second time. He has come for some Sunday feast. Devotees have taught him to chant. So he's chanting. He's coming. And then Prabhupada sings. Prabhupada gives a class. And there is a photo of Tamal Krishna Maharaj in that class. At the end of the class, during the kirtan, raising the arms and chanting. So at the time, when Prabhupada asks any question, then Tamal Krishna Maharaj asks the same question. Then Prabhupada says, no, such unsuccessful yogi, in the next life, Krishna will give. If you finish 1%, you will start from 2% onwards. And that convinces this Bhakta at that time, Tamal Krishna Maharaj. I think Mukunda Maharaj was driving Prabhupada back to the apartment. On the way back in the car, Prabhupada actually tells, that boy will become a devotee, like that. Prabhupada could see straight away. So this question has got a lot of significance in our parampara. So, when this question is asked by Arjuna, Krishna says, such unsuccessful yogis, there are two possibilities, he says. In one possibility, they will go to heavenly kingdom, enjoy, and then they come back. And then they'll be born in the family of Brahmanas or in some aristocratic family. Suchinam Srimatam Gehe Yogo Brashta Bijayate, he says. But then immediately after that, Krishna says, the other possibility is, such unsuccessful yogis, in the next life, they'll be born in the family of highly enlightened yogis and transcendentalists and devotees. That's why being born in devotee family means, it's a very, very special thing. Now, reason why I'm saying is, now the question is, how do we know which yogi is going to go to which of the option? Is the unsuccessful yogi going to go to heavenly kingdom, enjoy and come back and be born in a Brahmana family? Or is the unsuccessful yogi going to die and be born in devotee family straight away? What determines that is, in the previous life, the unsuccessful yogi, how much material desires did they have? If their material desires, if they gave up or if they didn't attain perfection because halfway through they lost focus and they went for materialistic pursuits, you see how Krishna is reciprocating with them. So Krishna looks at them, okay, you started with yoga, but now you have material desires. Fine, I will first fulfill your material desires. That's why he takes them to heavenly planet. And then they fulfill their material desires. Now after getting burnt out again, then they are born again, and then they are born in the family of Brahmanas and aristocratic family. On the other hand, unsuccessful yogi in the previous life who didn't have that much material desire, but who still hasn't attained perfection yet, they'll be born in devotee family straight away. So we don't need to bother about what will be my destination. We don't need to worry about what I am worshipping Krishna. I don't understand. Now, you may ask, Prabhu, do we need to understand all this? In one sense, no. Even if you don't understand, Krishna will give. I am explaining this to give us the conviction that Krishna is very personal. We don't need to doubt. Simply chant Hare Krishna, all of this Krishna will take care automatically. But if we know how Krishna is going to take care of us, then we can chant Hare Krishna even better. Correct? If your mind just said, oh, that means I don't need to read. No, you have to read more. You need to read now all the more. Because when you know how the process is working, you will surrender to the process even more. Once one disciple asks Prabhupada in a morning walk, Prabhupada, some people are saying we'll just chant Hare Krishna, we don't need to read books. Prabhupada said, no, if you really chant Hare Krishna and if you really have taste, you would want to naturally know more about Krishna. That means you should be the one who should be reading more. And that convinces the devotee. So we need to understand this process is complete, but coming back to the point, that's an exercise I'm giving to all of you. Read, and to all of you who are watching, read the purports that's in Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam. Anyone knows the verse number? 7, 5, 23, 24. Two verses come together actually. Read the purports of that. I warn you, it's the longest purport. So don't lose hope. But you read that, you will feel so grateful to Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada gives so much detail in terms of, you will see I'll put it this way. The purport of that verse is the condensed version of Nectar of Devotion. Whole Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada puts it in that one single verse purport. You will see offenses against the holy name, you will see offenses against deity worship, you will see offenses, literally everything. Whatever that you need to do in terms of our lifestyle, you will see. It will also teach us how the process works. So, please go through that. Coming back to CC. Whoever hears Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastime with faith and love very soon attains shelter at the Lord's lotus feet. After taking sannyas at the age of 24, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu lived another 24 years. For 6 of these years, he traveled extensively throughout India, sometimes going to Jagannath Puri and sometimes leaving. After traveling for 6 years, the Lord fixed his residence at Jagannath Puri and stayed there for 18 remaining years. So 48 years, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu performed his pastimes. 24 years he spent in Navadvip Dham. So that's Adi Lila. Of the remaining 24 years, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spends 6 years traveling and preaching. That's Madhya Lila. And the last 18 years, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spent only in Puri. That's Antya Lila. Antya Lila is only about Puri pastimes. Now, even if we have slept through the entire Madhya Lila, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is very considerate of that. So now he is going to give full summary of Madhya Lila. So please pay close attention. Even if you have slept before, doesn't matter. There's always a second chance. I shall now review the chapters of the Madhya Lila chronologically so that one can relish the transcendental features of these topics. In the first chapter, this is Madhya Lila, chapter 1. In the first chapter, I have given a synopsis of the last pastimes, Antya Lila. Within this chapter is a vivid description of some of the pastimes of the Lord that took place toward the end of his life. In the second chapter, I have described Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's talking like a crazy man. Within this chapter, it is indicated how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu manifested his different emotional moods. In the third chapter, I have described the Lord's acceptance of renounced order and how he enjoyed his pastimes at the house of Advaitacharya. So as I read this, try to recollect. In the fourth chapter, I have described Madhavendra Puri's installation of Gopal deity, as well as Gopinatha's stealing a pot of condensed milk at Ramuna. In the fifth chapter, I have narrated the story of Sakshi Gopal. Yesterday, Nandagokul Prabhu narrated the pastime of Sakshi Gopal. So that's Sakshi Gopal. In the fifth chapter, I have narrated the story of Sakshi Gopal. Lord Nityananda Prabhu narrated this while Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu listened. In the sixth chapter, I have told how Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was delivered. And in the seventh chapter, I have described the Lord's tour of different holy places and his deliverance of Vasudeva. In the 8th chapter, I have recorded the Lord's elaborate discussion with Ramananda Roy. This is Ramananda Roy Samvad. The Lord personally listened as Ramananda gave the conclusive essence of all Vedic literatures. In the 9th chapter, I have described the Lord's tour of South India and different places of pilgrimage. In the 10th chapter, I have described his meeting with all his devotees. In the 11th chapter, I have described the great chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra that surrounded the Lord. In 12th chapter, I have given a narration of the cleansing and washing of Gundicha temple. In the 13th chapter, I have described Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's dancing before the chariot of Jagannath. In the 14th chapter, there is an account of Hera Panchami function. Hera Panchami is the pastime where Jagannath goes, Lakshmiji waits, Jagannath says, I will come same day. She waits, Jagannath hasn't come. So 5th day, Lakshmiji goes. And servants of Lakshmiji, they arrest all the servants of Jagannath. That's pastime. Also in the 14th chapter is an account of how the emotional ecstasy of the gopis was described by Swarup Damodara and tasted by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In 15th chapter, I have described how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu highly praised the qualities of his devotees and accepted lunch at the house of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. At that time, he delivered Amogha. Amogha was son-in-law of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. He was blaspheming Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and then because of that, he gets afflicted with leprosy, and then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes, and then he tells him, there's Krishna in your heart. Why are you having so much filth there? Clean it. And then he just wipes it like that, and he says, get up, Amogha, chant and dance. Chant Hare Krishna and dance. And then Amogha jumps up, fully rejuvenated, being relieved of his bodily ailment, and then he takes the shelter at the lotus feet of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In the 16th chapter, I have described how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu departed for Vrindavana and journeyed through Bengal. He later returned to Jagannath Puri from Kanainachala. In the 17th chapter, I have described the Lord's journey through the great forest of Jharikanda. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu first tries to go to Vrindavana. At that time, he comes to Ramkeli, and that's where he meets Rupa and Sanatana. Sanatana Goswami at that time advises, he's still Dabirkas Shakar Malik. They haven't actually moved away from being prime ministers and home ministers of Nawab. So at that time, Sanatana Goswami, he requests Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when you go to Vrindavan, it's better you go alone. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, wherever he goes, millions of people come. So he says, this is not the best way to go. So then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu goes till Kanainachala and returns back. And then he goes again. In the 17th chapter, I have described the Lord's journey through the great forest of Jharikanda and his arrival at Mathura. In the 18th chapter, there is a description of his tour of the forest of Vrindavana. In the 19th chapter, I have described how the Lord returned to Prayag from Mathura and empowered Srila Rupa Goswami to spread devotional service. So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu from Bengal, first he goes to Varanasi, from there he goes to Vrindavan. On the way back, he meets Rupa Goswami in Prayag, and there he instructs Srila Rupa Goswami, instructions to Srila Rupa Goswami, you will see. Then he goes back. In the 19th chapter, I have described how the Lord returned to Prayag from Mathura and empowered Sri Rupa Goswami to spread devotional service. In the 20th chapter, the Lord's meeting with Sanatana Goswami is described. So this is the time when Sanatana Goswami arrives after being imprisoned by the king. He bribes the guard, and then he finally makes his way to Benares, Varanasi, Kashi. And then he comes there, not clean shaven. In fact, he was mistaken to be just like a wandering mendicant. So then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes outside of his home, and then he embraces him. And then you will see that pastime there. So that's when Srila Sanatana Goswami meets Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In 21st chapter, there is a description of Krishna's beauty and opulence. And in 22nd chapter, there is a description of the twofold discharge of devotional service. In the 23rd chapter, there is a description of the mellows of transcendental loving service. And in 24th chapter, I have described how the Lord analyzed the Atmarama verse. So we discussed about Supreme Lord's opulence, 64 qualities of the Supreme Lord. And we also discussed about the 61 explanations of Atmarama verse, which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu repeated. Not only, first he said about that to Sarubam Bhattacharya in Puri, then he repeats that to, in fact not repeats, he gives even more explanation, further explanations actually, many more to Sanatana Goswami, and then later on when Prakashananda Saraswati requests, he again repeats it. In the 25th chapter, there is a description of how the residents of Varanasi were converted to Vaishnavism and how the Lord returned to Nilachala. Achala means that which doesn't move. Chanchala, moving, flickering all the time. Achala means stable, static. Nilachala means, Nila is blue, so blue mountain, that's what it means. Achala is mountain, immovable things. Stavaranam Himalayas, of immovable objects am Himalayas, Krishna says. Okay, Achala means that which doesn't move. Nilachala here refers to Puri. I have thus summarized these pastimes in the 25th chapter. Hearing this summary, one can understand the whole purport of this scripture. So in this way, he gives the entire summary of Madhya Lila. I have now summarized the entire subject matter of the Madhya Lila. These pastimes cannot be described elaborately even in millions of books. Okay. To deliver all fallen souls, the Lord traveled from country to country. He personally tasted the transcendental pleasure of devotional service, and he simultaneously spread the cult of devotion everywhere. So this is very important. I was speaking to a devotee yesterday, and I was asking him, how do you know Krishna is pleased with our service? What is the answer? Anyone wants to take a shot? How do we know? We are doing devotional service, but how do we know whether Krishna is pleased or not? Any takers? I'm going to call names now. We continue to have the enthusiasm. Good. Anything else? Now I'm hearing 4 people talking at the same time. Come on, one at a time. Yes. Taste increases. Yes. You may feel joyful. Good. Mercy comes to us. Let me push it a little further. How? Or let me be more precise. Through whom? Spiritual master. When we sing Guru Ashtakam in the morning, there is a verse in that actually says that. Anyone remembers that? Go on, go on. Yasya prasadat bhagavad prasado yasya aprasadan nagati kutopi. When spiritual master is pleased, then Supreme Lord is pleased. If spiritual master is not pleased, that means Supreme Lord is not pleased. Easy. So I asked this devotee the question. He said, if I please Supreme Lord Krishna, I'll be happy. Then I said, Prabhu, have you distributed books anytime? He said, yes. Have you got this experience? Whole day you will try, not even one book goes. Have you got that experience? He said, most of the time. I said, good. But then, let's say in the evening you visit the temple. You come in front of Prabhupada and you bow down. After having spent, let's say, 3-4 hours, you got battered. Your ego gets crushed. Just when book distribution is very difficult, actually. I always say this, sometimes devotees say book distribution is fun. Fun, I don't know, I don't want to say it artificially, it's fun. It's not fun, it is tough, but it's worth it. Why? Because we can bring pleasure for Prabhupada, we can bring pleasure to Radha Gopinath. Even if we get defeated, we can bring so much pleasure. So I want to set reasonable expectations. Always, if there is any new bhakta, before taking him on books, I always say, look, this is tough. People may say fun, don't believe them. It's not fun, So you have reasonable expectation and you come. But whoever persists, will see the light of the day. And I told him, I never have bad days. And he was like asking, how Prabhu? How you don't have bad days? I told him, I'll tell you later. And one day, after many months, he asked, Prabhu, please tell me, how is it you never have bad days? I told him, that's very simple. I never stop book distribution until I distribute books, finish distributing books. I extend to the day until you want to distribute at least a certain number you may actually have, so you do. So why do you stop a day when your day is bad? Keep on extending. Keep on persisting. One question I asked Narsingha Prabhu a couple of days ago in the class, Bhagavatam class. Question we always have, right? How much should we try and at what point we should let go, surrendering to the destiny? Our problem is we always have wisdom at the wrong time, After doing it, we realize, maybe I shouldn't have actually tried this. So we don't know at what time we should just accept things as they are and at what time we should keep on pushing. Prabhu gave a beautiful answer. He said, instruction of spiritual master, you should keep on persisting until death. Anything other than that, he said, you can use your discretion. You have to let go at some time, things, and you have to surrender to the destiny. I tried my best. I have to just surrender now. So that's all we can do. Morning, I was sitting and chanting. Like maybe 3 o'clock, 3:15. I was sitting and chanting, japa. Then we have some brahmacharis, they'll come set up the temple room. Suddenly I just heard a sound, somebody just opening the door and closing. And if you sit in the foyer and chant early in the morning, based on certain symptoms, you can realize what is happening. 4:10, ting, 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 ting. If you hear the bell, that means Gopinath is waking up. 4 o'clock. 4:10, if you hear the bell again, that means Gopinath is now getting ready for eating Mangala sweets. 4:25, if you hear the bell again, that means Krishna is washing hands, getting ready for Mangalarati. You better get in at that time. So like that, So opening the door, closing means, they are taking Tulsi Marani. So I was chatting this morning and then suddenly I saw door just opened and then even before I could take darshan of Tulsi Marani, it just closed. And I actually remembered Hiranyakashipu's pastime. When Hiranyakashipu was tormenting demigods so much, they don't know what to do. All they did was they looked in the direction of Vaikuntha. It's given. You can offer obeisances in the direction of Vaikuntha. You will see in Islamism, when they do namas, they face towards Mecca and they do. It's a Vedic practice. They turn towards the direction of the Supreme Lord and they bow down. Demigods do that. 7th canto, you can read it. Again 7th canto. So they turn in the direction and then they bow down. Then I thought, Tulsi Marani went in this direction. Bow down. I didn't take darshan. So, how do we know spiritual master is pleased? How do we know Krishna is pleased? When spiritual master is pleased. But then, there are many days when we will actually have wrong experience. Not wrong experience, not so good days. And that can be any service. You would have tried genuinely, but for some reason it didn't turn out the way you wanted it. So, you may feel down. However, simply because of that attempt, we know Prabhupada is pleased. We know Radha Gopinath is pleased. Okay, so we should never go with how we feel. Because terrorists also think terrorizing people is good for them. That's what they are thinking and they are doing. So if we don't bring Krishna in center, even in our devotional life, we will be doomed. So we have to be very, very careful. Even in devotional life, we make wrong decisions, we will be doomed. We have to be very, very careful there. We need to bring Krishna in the center, everything. It's not about how I feel. Then the focus is already shifted away from Krishna. It's not about us. Japa, we were discussing this once. Why is it we are feeling ecstasy when we do kirtan, but not during japa? In kirtan, somehow, because of collective enthusiasm, focus is more on giving pleasure to Radha Gopinath, giving pleasure to other devotees, not about us. So we feel very happy. Japa, as soon as we pick up, we want to get Krishna Prema right now. With that mode we chant, All you get is sleep, You sleep again. Japa also, we need to remember to understand, just like when we do Kirtan, we are doing it for pleasure of Radha Gopinath. It's easy to relate. You look at Gaurnitai, they'll be happily dancing. So we look at them and we feel, I'm pleasing Supreme Lord. That is why it's giving us happiness. Not because I'm singing Hare Krishna and because of that I'm deriving happiness. That's not how it works. Unless Krishna is happy, we can never be happy. So when we do Kirtan, because of the collective participation there, we end up accidentally pleasing devotees, even without our knowledge, unconsciously, pleasing Supreme Lord. That's why we feel so joyful. When we pick up the beads, we have to also go with the same consciousness. I'm chanting Hare Krishna to bring pleasure to Tulsi Maharani, to bring pleasure to Radha Gopinath. If you go with that, we will find the same amount of ecstasy in Japa also. Otherwise, in Japa, you cannot dance. Actually, I've seen one devotee dancing. In Mahaprabhu, I was chanting, suddenly one devotee jumping up and down. I'm like, Prabhu, what happened? I'm feeling sleepy, Prabhu. Okay, continue. Whatever works. I never say, sometimes some devotees chant loud. Some devotees, Prabhuji, maybe you should tell. I always think 200, 300 times because everyone is struggling hard to stay awake. So, either I should assist, otherwise I should keep quiet. If you find it hard, please walk outside. Temple facilities big, walk and chant. What can be done? Everyone is trying their best. So, when we chant Japa also, we need to be careful. Only reason why we are chanting Japa is to give pleasure to the Lord. Now, if we give pleasure to the Lord by our Japa, if with that motive we do, then Gopinath will be pleased. Because Gopinath will be pleased, we will be automatically pleased. We are just leaves. We should always understand. We are not root. We are only leaves. So, focus we need to put always on bringing pleasure to Gopinath. Same principle even in any relationship also. Devotee relationships. If you talk about clash comes, moment anywhere, moment focus comes to us, it's a problem. That's the bottom line. So, focus should never come to us. Focus should always be going towards Radha Gopinath all the time. If we keep doing that, then any activity that we find, including mats, we do Kirtan very ecstatically, but we forget to put the mats back because we don't find the same ecstasy moving mats. But if we understand, if we pile up the mats properly, confirm, you have heard the clap? So, if we put the mats there properly, there is enough ecstasy even in moving the mats also. There is enough ecstasy in serving devotees also. There is enough ecstasy in cleaning the temple also. Every activity that we do, we will have the same amount of ecstasy. Try that. And if it doesn't work, try again. I was reading one quote of Prabhupada's on Bhakti Shastri. I'll finish with that. So Prabhupada says, so these books I have written, Bhagavad Gita, NOD, Nectar of Devotion, Nectar of Instruction, Ishopanishad. So you read. And if you don't understand, you take a guess what Prabhupada would have said after this. And if you don't understand, that's what Prabhupada said. If you don't understand, we will think, ask your friend, ask another senior devotee. Prabhupada says, if you don't understand, read all those books again. It's there in a letter. So it's important that we understand what's happening. Gopinath is having dinner. There's so much activity that's happening here. Come on, we have to be conscious. Whenever you hear the bell, you remember. So now Gopinath is taking boga. You come after 15 minutes, you will hear bell again. Then you know Gopinath is washing his hands. Shravanam. And then you will hear another bell. Now get ready to bow down. The altar is going to open. So it's a very, very personal process. And Krishna wants all of us to be engaged in that. This is Navvidha Bhakti, where every sense is engaged in serving Krishna only, including subtle sense. You use your intelligence. Prabhu is back after distributing prasad. Rain, hail or shine, Prabhu always goes. Before also he is there packing. And then he'll distribute. He'll come back, wash the pots also. And then he'll come here. After this, he will ask me a few questions outside also. In every sense you will see, he'll be engaged. So when we look at devotees like that, we can actually take inspiration. Kirtan alone doesn't give ecstasy. Prasadam alone doesn't give ecstasy. Books alone doesn't give ecstasy. Everything in Krishna consciousness gives ecstasy. Okay, so if we remember that, then 24/7 we can be happy. If the focus is simply to give pleasure to Krishna. Now let's see this lesson in action. Collect all the mats after the class always. Whenever you see anything lying around in the temple room, at least, charity begins from temple room. Start from the temple room at least. Don't put rubbish, pile up the mats, put it in one corner. I keep requesting everyone, please show some Trinada Pisunichena by collecting the mats. To take service from others, we have Maiki Prabhu here. Every single day Prabhu comes and cleans. Prabhu never complains, but I will complain. So please put the mats back after you do, because there are devotees who come and they do service. It's actually, technically speaking, it's aparad to take seva from others. So we have to be very, very careful. Brahmana means, Prabhupada says, Brahmana will leave the place more cleaner than what it was before. That's Brahmana. Vaishnava is supposed to be higher than Brahmana. Not supposed to be. Vaishnava is higher than Brahmana. That means we should always be doing it. If we leave the place more dirtier, filthier than what it was before, then Prabhupada says that's a Shudra mentality. So we have to be very, very careful. I'll stop there. There are still some more verses. We'll finish tomorrow and start Antilila as well. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Gopinath Bhagwan ki jai. Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani ki jai. Shri Shri Gauranitai ki jai. Shri Caitanya Charitamrta ki jai. Samaveda Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha